Hello and welcome to my garage. Behind me sits my 1979 Volkswagen Beetle Cabriolet, and today we're going to check it out.
Let's start with the first third of the car, which includes the front fenders, the hood, and what would be the bumpers. Obviously, the crash bumpers are not currently on the car, but we do have both the bumpers and the mounts. The fenders are on the car, but are going to have to be removed before the car is finished so they can be repaired and painted, and also the rubber weather stripping needs to be put on as well. From a distance, it may appear as though the fenders are ready to be painted, but a closer look says otherwise. Due to the old turn signal housings rusting, there is pitting or lots of deep dents around where the housings used to be, but with some Bondo and some sanding, that can be fixed. There is also small dents on the fenders themselves that can be easily fixed as well. Also in the front section there is the hood. Luckily, it only needs a little sanding and paint and it will be ready for the chrome trim to be put back on. Moving into the midsection of the car, we can take a look at the doors. These are the original doors, and luckily, they were two of the few things that didn't need to be replaced. While the doors themselves were in good shape, the windows needed to be replaced. This is only a two-door convertible, so in theory, there is less that would need to be replaced. While that may be true, that leads to everything else that needs to be fixed being a lot harder to fix, such as the right rear quarter panel. When we first got the car, the quarter panels looked good enough to where if there was damage, nobody would notice it. However, when we brought it to the body shop, they noticed it right away, and they discovered that the structural qualities of the quarter panel had been compromised in the accident, so they would need to be replaced. Looking at the back end of the car, it is in slightly better shape than the front, because there are no major dents, holes, gaps, or rust spots to deal with. Like the front, the back has both fenders, the rear engine cover, and still, no bumper. Along with having almost all of its components on the car, the back is also primed for paint. However, it is more ready than the front because it has no spots that need major bodywork and sanding. To sum it up, it just needs some cleaning, paint, and the chrome badging, and it'll be finished. Now we get to the reason this particular generation of Beetle was so popular, other than it just being one of the very cheapest cars somebody could buy new at the time. While the convertible top in our particular Beetle has definitely seen better days, the mechanism still works perfectly and can even be done by one person with not too much effort. The vinyl covering needs to be replaced. However, we've already bought it, and that job can pretty much be done in an afternoon with only a few screwdrivers, some wrenches, and some elbow grease. You may have noticed I mentioned the engine cover in the section about the rear of the car. Unlike almost all cars today, the Beetle is rear-engined. I don't want to say that this dinky little car from the 1970s is anything like a modern supercar, but the only cars that are produced today with mid or rear mounted engines are sports cars and supercars, such as the new Corvette and some Ferraris and Lamborghinis. Again, that's just about where the comparisons stop. To distribute the 39-ish horsepower coming from the rear-mounted engine to the rear wheels, the Beetle uses a 4-speed manual transaxle that is mounted right in front of the engine. This particular transaxle is the original, however we rebuilt it as it had lost third gear before we bought it. You may have noticed that where the engine should be, there was no engine to be found. That's because it had to be completely rebuilt, and the easiest way to do that was to take it completely out of the car and put it on an engine stand. The whole engine was much easier to access once it was unmounted from the transmission and put on the stand, as everything was out in the open. The engine was disassembled down to the block and crankshaft and rebuilt to the point it is at now. All of the major internals, such as the pistons, connecting rods, cylinders, and cylinder heads, are all on, so now all that is left is the accessories, such as the heat shields and fuel injectors. As you will see in a moment, the engine cranks just fine and is not seized after sitting with no oil for over 3 years. There is very light oil in the engine at the moment to prevent it from seizing up or scratching whenever we need to crank it. With this car having a manual transmission, it needs a clutch, and as shown before, it wasn't on the transmission, and right now, it's not on the engine either. It is a bit rusted, however that shouldn't be a problem as it is just surface rust. Once we get closer to completely finishing the engine, we will be able to put the clutch and pressure plate on the flywheel and it'll be ready to go. The suspension is the part of the project that is closest to completion, as there is only one element in it that is in need of repair, and that is the right front lower control arm. The bushing on the element of the control arm that connects to the steering knuckle and hub needs to be replaced, but other than that, the entirety of both the front and rear suspension is completely roadworthy. While this may be considered part of the suspension, the brakes are nearly finished as well. The only thing left to do for the brakes to be completed is to install the brake fluid reservoir and bleed the brakes.
So this is the end of the overview of my 1979 Volkswagen Beetle. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye.